You're listening to Season 11 of Mobile Suit Breakdown, a weekly podcast covering the entirety of sci-fi mega franchise Mobile Suit Gundam from 1979 to today.
This is episode 11.10, The Mummy Gundam Returns, and we are your hosts. I'm Tom, and my genuine podcasting spirit has been twisted to evil purposes by Kyoji and the Devil Gundam.
And I'm Nina, new to G Gundam and wondering if we need to watch the original Universal Monster movies.
To properly appreciate G Gundam, we should watch every movie ever made, in release order.
That might take a while.
Our listeners are patient.
As an ad-free independent podcast, Mobile Suit Breakdown is aided and abetted by our paying subscribers. Thank you all, and special thanks to our newest patrons, Como the Clown, Captain Haro, Daniel F., Seth, Triceranook, and Bill G. You keep us Genki.
This week we are covering G Gundam Episode 10, Kyofu Bore Faita Shutsugen, or Terror, the Phantom Fighter Appears, originally broadcast on June 24th, 1994. No new names to highlight in the credits this episode, but do note that the key staff are all Victory Gundam alums. Now, the play-by-play. It all began on a dark and stormy night, much like this one. The Gundam team of Neo Egypt was sheltering in their hangar, passing the time by telling ghost stories about the long-dead fighter, Dahal Muhammad, who once brought glory to their forefathers. Suddenly, they heard the howling wind, felt the spray of sand from outside. They turned to look and found the doors open. A figure, clad in bandages, stood in the gap, and behind him, just visible against the dark, the head of another Gundam. It was none other than Dahal Muhammad himself. Or was it? Where flesh had yielded to decay, now steel reigned. In sunken sockets that once were eyes, now only diodes burned. How came this walking corpse to quicken anew? Was it the lash of lightning licking at its half-sunk stony tomb? Perhaps it was the work of that Devil Gundam's cursed kiss, twisting the fighter's indomitable spirit to unholy ends. They say Dahal was slain in battle, an accident. No fault of the Neo-Chinese fighter he faced. But the dead do not accept such convenient absolution. Only blood will answer. And so the mummy wandered the dunes in search of a new victim to slake his thirst. The dragon of Neo-China, Sai-Shi. A great storm gathered, the sands obscured the sun, and in the vortex, Dragon clashed with Pharaoh and struck a killing blow against that which could not die. Banished 'neath the sands once more, the mummy left behind its mystery. The boy sought answers in the mummy's tomb, but there the thing that once had been Dahal rose from second death to fall upon him anew. Nothing in the dragon's power, neither fist nor spear nor fear of flame could stop the relentless machine. Only living rage will answer the icy hate of the grave. They say a wandering swordsman from the east appeared in the nick of time to cut the revenant down before it could tear Sai-Shi's heart from out his chest. They say he blasted the thing that had been Dahal to atoms and scattered the dust so widely that no devilish power might ever gather them up again. But do you believe such convenient stories? Perhaps Dahal Muhammad and his Gundam are still out there, sleeping beneath the sands, and one day, when the night is dark, as it is tonight, and the wind howls over the dunes, they will roam this ruined earth again, looking for one more challenge. Ready? Go!
Given what we know about Imagawa, The vibe of this episode is very much like an old school monster movie. I thought of Tintin and the Curse of the Pharaoh's Tomb. I thought of The Mummy. There's this mummy and it's unkillable, and there's a curse and a prophecy. And
I was looking at this a little bit, actually, and when you say old school, you're probably more right than you know. Like, the first movie to feature a mummy was made by the same guy who made the, Journey to the Moon film.
oh, wow. Lumiere?
Yeah, in a year that starts with 18. But there was a vogue for them up to the 50s, basically. And then it really petered off in the 60s. You get a couple, but you don't get nearly so many mummy movies. In the 80s, you see a few, and then there's a big resurgence in the late 90s. But all throughout that period, even when mummy movies were no longer in the theaters, they were a staple of Scooby-Doo. And I think there's a lot of that Scooby-Doo influence to be seen in Sai and his mummy is after me.
He is so terrified. But yeah, the general feeling of the whole episode is very like those kinds of mummy media.
Imagawa says what he was really trying to evoke in this episode was the feeling of old Twilight Zone episodes, or for the Japanese context, Ultra Q. Although the shot very near the beginning of the episode where the mummy is walking, shambling in front of a pyramid, and its shadow is cast on the side of the pyramid, huge. This he cribbed from the opening of a Hitchcock film.
Oh, okay. I thought that looked kind of familiar.
Yeah. And I'm torn on this because, it's got the G Gundam problem. This depiction of Egypt has nothing to do with the Egypt that exists today.
No.
Again, like Neo-Mexico, resurrecting the corpse of 19th century European literature. A lot of the mummy stuff is based on an old Bram Stoker novel.
And a lot of it also on travelogues of Egyptologists of questionable legitimacy.
Absolutely.
Visiting Egypt and hunting for relics and bringing all of that back with them.
The stories about mummies and the curses of the tombs and all that, these are staples of European Orientalism.
And probably stuff that local guides told tourists to make their visit more exciting.
Sure. I mean, that's like we were talking about in the China episode. Many of these things are elements of the cultures and histories of these places that have proven to be globally commercializable.
Sensational.
They are monetizable. You can make money selling the fear of mummies to a bunch of rich, stupid European tourists and Americans.
I mean, the idea that the government of Neo-Egypt would spend the kind of money necessary to build a guy a new ancient-style tomb.
Complete with traps.
Complete with traps.
Do you know how much stone costs?
I absolutely believe they would build a monument to this guy or even a very elaborate burial site because he'd be a local hero and people would revere him. But a tomb, like an old school Valley of the Kings tomb?
Maybe it was funded by the Neo-Egypt Tourism Board.
And I say this as someone who went through a really interested in ancient Egypt phase as a child.
Ooh, unlocking new Nina lore every day. So a big part of the reason you don't get these kinds of monumental constructions anymore is because, they used enslaved labor, and now labor costs money.
Right.
A lot of money. But in a Gundam context, if you could use mobile suits to move your big slabs of stone around, even to quarry them, would it cost as much? Probably not.
Probably not, but you'd still need skilled craftspeople to do the carving.
Oh, and to make all the traps.
And the painting and the traps, yeah.
Also that they have hieroglyphics in this tomb.
Yeah, well.
Modern Egypt does not use hieroglyphics for writing.
Quote unquote hieroglyphics. I'm sure they don't make any sense.
But I was saying I was torn. Because on the one hand, all that stuff. On the other hand, it's a fun episode. And the Pharaoh Gundam looks sick AF.
My only problem with this episode, because I mostly liked it very much, is that there are a few moments where it feels as though it can't commit to its tone. For the most part, it's a very lighthearted episode, it's funny seeing Saichi, who we know is such a good fighter, be terrified and calling Domon Aniki and begging him desperately, no, you have to stay with me, the ghost. And seeing the monks be like, oh no, we have failed in raising Saichi because he's superstitious and afraid of ghosts, and they're crying.
They're so good at the guilt trip.
And the mummy itself, while terrifying, also feels silly, right? And yet, this is then punctuated by Saichi's genuine horror when he thinks he's killed someone, and Domon's anger thinking of his brother, and Rain's sadness at the end of the episode that he has to like tap into this rage and that he is going to have to keep tapping into it as he looks for and eventually probably fights his own brother. And these are quite poignant moments, or they would be if they weren't surrounded by just like very silly stuff.
If the episode were simply horror and tragedy all the way through, like that would not work as well. It needs some variance in the tone. It needs some dynamic range.
It does. I just felt as though they didn't handle that as well this episode as they have in some other ones. I don't know. Because the funny parts I found very funny.
Did you find the poignant parts very poignant?
Saichi's total horror at having killed someone, yes. Domon's stuff about his brother, less so.
There's, I think, an element of unintentional humor. Because the last thing he says to Rain is like, don't cry over this, Rain. It's going to get much worse.
Yeah. But I was glad you brought up how humorous and how scared Saichi is, because there is, I think, a tendency in a lot of shows like this to make child characters who compete at a level with adult characters, basically just small adults. And I think they've gone out of their way to make sure that Saichi still feels like a child. Like, yes, he's a really good fighter. Yes, he's the Gundam fighter for Neo China, but he is also a young boy. And I really appreciate that and think it adds a nice silliness and fun to the series.
I was reading some commentary Imagawa did about his process in making the show and how it evolved. And for him, all of the 5 like main Gundam fighter characters represent different aspects of his own personality.
Oh, neat.
So for him, Saichi is how he remembers himself being as a child, with all the sense of like remembered embarrassment.
That's delightful.
Do you think when Saichi landed the, quote, killing blow that he intended to strike the cockpit? Was he pushed to the point of breaking the rules by this desperate struggle to survive? Or was it just that he couldn't tell with all the bandages and smoke and dust where he was striking?
The second one. I think, he's fighting in the middle of a sandstorm. And I think that's why Domon cries out, like, I think he says, like, look out or be careful. Like, he means you're getting close to the cockpit. And then he strikes it. I don't think he meant to.
See, I don't know. In his comments after that, when he's, like, saying, forgive me, and I'm not supposed to do this, it's so horrible, he doesn't at any point say it was an accident. He doesn't say I didn't mean to. He says I'm not supposed to, and yet.
That could also just mean that he's brought up not to make excuses. Whether he meant to or not, whether it was an accident or not, it is what happened. And then, of course, we get this nice parallel with what we find out about Dachau, and that Dachau was killed by Saichi's grandfather, who, again, didn't even hit the cockpit, took off its head, but somehow this caused some kind of catastrophic failure and caused the cockpit to explode. So Saichi's grandfather accidentally killed Dachau. And then Saichi almost destroys the mummy, again by accident. I gotta say, though, I'm not very knowledgeable about wrestling. However, the wrestler is killed, comes back as an undead monster generations later because his fighter spirit demands a rematch. Feels like a wrestling plot, doesn't it?
It does. Though it also feels like a wuxia plot. Really, any horror movie plot. They're back from the grave for revenge. Maybe it was because he was defeated in a tournament. Maybe it was because he's angry at the hot young college teens for having a good time because he never had a good time. Or maybe they ran him over with their car and now he's back for revenge. In the Egypt context specifically, like all of these stories about mummies coming back, right? It's built on this fear of the great power that once was and now sleeps beneath the sands. This ancient cult, these ancient gods that might one day rise again in a Lovecraftian kind of sense to swallow the world. But it's also, and this is the reason it was so popular, I think, during the height of the European imperial period, is that it's also the fear that, like, your empire could someday sink beneath the sands. The great glories of Victorian London could one day be swallowed up by the rising Thames.
It's the Ozymandias poem, right?
In all your vanity and all of your glory.
And all your confidence.
You too shall someday walk this path. Someday you shall be wrapped in bandages and rise from the murk of the Thames, rise from the bogs of England for revenge. After Sci-Shi goes through the ringer for his maybe accidental cockpit strike, it's then revealed that the Pharaoh Gundam has a gun that comes out of its chest to point specifically at the other Gundam's cockpit.
I noticed that. I thought that has to have been made specifically to kill other pilots. There's
Right?
no other reason to put that there.
Was the Pharaoh Gundam 4 built with that gun, or did the Devil Gundam create that gun for it when it was regenerating the Pharaoh Gundam?
That is a very good question, which brings up one of the other things I like very much about this episode. There is a particular disgust, a particular kind of body horror in the sort of bioorganic. It's not completely mechanical. It's not completely biological. Somehow it's both. It's a machine doing weirdly organic, gloopy things like regrowing flesh.
I need to get you to watch Bubblegum Crisis. Remember when we went to see Akira at a midnight showing?
Yes. Yes, I do. And again, there's this weirdly organic Gundam gore as well, not just in the regeneration scenes, but when Sci-Shi lights the Pharaoh Gundam on fire, like encloses it in this inferno of flames. The eyeballs look, well, I say eyeballs. They're not eyeballs, but they look an awful lot like eyeballs. And when it comes back out of the flames, it's as if there's little gouts of blood coming off of it. And then, on the other hand, underneath the mummy's wrappings is not an entirely, like, human corpse. There's something mechanical going on in there, too. There are wires and tubes.
Well, you can't really bring the dead back, but you can transform them into robots. Robots of revenge.
Revengerine. Sorry, I had to do it. How much of an international incident do we think was caused by rain blowing up the Neo-Egypt national heroes, too?
I mean, Neo-Egypt just had its entire Gundam fight team murdered in the desert. I feel like they might have a few complaints to lodge. There's going to be a whole investigation of this. Oh no, this is going to be one of those scenarios where the investigators get too close and then they become infected by the Devil Gundam energy. Their specialized investigating mobile suits, like their Columbo Gundam, are going to become corrupted by the Devil Gundam.
No, you cannot corrupt a Columbo. Even a Columbo Gundam. It's impossible. It can't be done.
They would never make a Columbo Gundam because you can't give it a funny hat.
Do you have to give it a kind of ugly coat? I did have a moment at the very end when Domon has crushed the mummy in the Shining Gundam's hand and the sparkly dust of it is floating away. I'm like, no, Domon, don't you know how much money you could get for mummy dust on the black market?
Oh no.
There was a vogue for using it in sort of pseudo-medicinal powders and things.
How long ago?
I don't think as long ago as you might want to think. I mean, certainly long ago.
I'm troubled by this.
But what won't people make pseudo-medicinal powders out of? Hang on, I'm searching powdered mummy.
Well, don't buy any.
No, of course not.
Not even as a business expense.
Oh, it turns out the powdered mummy thing was like a whole miscommunication. Because in Arabic, mumia is a type of resinous bitumen and is used in traditional Islamic medicine. And then beginning around the 12th century, when supplies of imported natural bitumen ran short, mumia was misinterpreted as mummy, and the word's meaning expanded to a black resinous exudate scraped from embalmed mummies. Unscrupulous European apothecaries began to sell fraudulent mumia prepared by embalming and desiccating fresh corpses then.
Ugh.
People are gross.
I would like to go back a few minutes to when I didn't know that.
Sorry.
Mobile Suit Breakdown. You will learn things, whether you want to or not.
So it sounds like in Europe it was mostly from the 12th to 17th centuries, but also well into the 18th century.
Okay. That's actually kind of about when I thought it would
When
have
you
been.
thought it would be.
Yeah.
Okay. With this episode, we have now had a second episode with each of the group I'm going to call the secondary Gundam fighters, the ones who get to be repeat characters in Domon's saga.
The four horsemen of the something.
And all of their stories have been of kind of varying significance. Chibity shows up again, but he doesn't do much, and it doesn't feel like the story has much importance for him as a character. Argo's story, very important for Argo. We learn a bit more about his past. He gets to settle this vendetta this guy has against him. It's kind of a big deal. For Georges de Sand, somewhere in between, Gentle Chapman is a fighter who he has respected and admired since he started on this journey of being a Gundam fighter, and now he feels like he has to save the guy from himself. Not quite as personal as Argo's situation, or as poignant, but still significant. And now we have Saisaishi, and a big part of this story with him just kind of feels like it's very fear is the mind killer. Sorry, kid, you gotta grow up.
But I think you're missing the connecting factor, the thing that all four of these episodes have in common, the most important thing that they're doing, functionally, within the story.
Cool robots?
Well, obviously, yes. Cool robots available in your local toy store right now. Go out and buy them. These are the four that are actually commercialized at this point. You could go out and buy them. But no, what they're really doing, the most important thing, I think, is to show that no matter how things ended at the end of each of their introductory episodes, they're bros. They're all Domon's friends.
Mm-hmm.
And not only are they friends, they're the kind of friends who work together, even if it means bending the rules of the Gundam fight a little bit. They'll help each other out. These are his nakama. And if you're a weeb of my age, you probably remember One Piece and the translator notes about how deeply meaningful the term nakama is. It's more than just your friends. But no, there's buddies, there's friends, there's pals, there's crew.
I mean, he calls Domon Aniki.
You would definitely know this better than I. What is the specific nuance of Aniki versus other ways of referring to your brother? It's what they use in the Like a Dragon games
right.
for the various Yakuza characters.
Wasn't there, I forget which Gundam it was, there's a point where Haro calls one of the Gundam pilot protags Aniki.
Yeah. And Uso was like, where did you learn to talk like that?
Right.
But in this episode, it is Aniki that Domon uses to refer to Kyoji.
I think Aniki implies that the person saying it and the person being called it are not of the same, social status exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And it can mean elder brother, and it's familiar, but it's honorific or respectful. It can mean one senior, and it can mean just an older man.
So it doesn't quite work as bro.
No. It's not something I think that peers would call each other.
That makes sense. While we're talking about translation, I have generally not had any issues with the translation in this show, but there was one in this episode that really rubbed me the wrong way.
Oh.
It ran afoul of my domain-specific knowledge, which is always dangerous for a translator.
Was it one of the Chinese names of one of the attacks that he uses?
No, it's the Japanese name of one of the attacks.
Oh.
When Domon goes crazy mode at the end, when he goes into his super angry, super powered mode, and he attacks with the sword, he says over and over again, he says, ski, 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 as he strikes the head of the Pharaoh Gundam.
Which is a name of a kendo attack, right? Like a sword fighting attack.
You're making the mistake that the translator made.
Oh, does it just mean the target? No, not even. Okay.
Do you want to keep guessing?
No,
or do you want me to explain?
Sorry. Go ahead.
In a kendo-specific context, ski refers to a strike to the throat, which is how it's translated in this show. It's translated as throat strike. But it actually means thrust. And it means throat strike in the kendo context because the throat is the only valid target where you can score with a thrusting attack. Unless you're using two swords, which is a different thing. Don't worry about it. In standard kendo, the throat is the only valid target for a thrusting attack. And so when you say thrust, you mean thrust to the throat. But ski in general in sword fighting in general and in martial arts in general just means a thrusting attack.
Got it.
And since Domon is not attacking the throat, he is attacking the front of the face.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to translate it as throat strike.
I did think that was odd.
And now you know why. Also, change of topic, not a translation point. I thought it was really funny when they confront the mummy in the tomb, and Domon is like, Rain, use it now. And we know Rain. She's a gadget sidekick. We expect like some sort of bespoke mummy capturing device. No, it's a grenade filled with high explosives.
Yeah, when it first went off, I thought it was some sort of light grenade, like blinding or something. And then like, oh no, it's just exploding. Yet again, Domon attempts to deal with a problem by saying, this has nothing to do with me. However, Rain does not threaten to leave him, not even jokingly.
No.
Have we broken the streak?
Maybe.
Also, nobody got kidnapped.
But for the third episode in a row, somebody gets disabled by being punched in the stomach.
Yep.
3 episodes in a row, they do the exact same solar plexus uppercut technique. I already said I really liked the Pharaoh Gundam, but Dahal's fight suit, when they show him in the flashback, the like white suit with blue accents and the blue eye and the gold collar, that looked so sick. That might be the best looking fight suit so far.
It was pretty cool.
I've actually thought a lot of the Gundams and other stuff that only show up in flashbacks or stills, like the Scud Gundam, like if they only have to draw it once, often it ends up looking super cool. They briefly show us the head of the Gundam that was piloted by Sai-Chi's grandfather. Mm-hmm. And it looks a lot like the Dragon Gundam's head, but then it's got the red, like, Chinese Communist Party star right in the center of its forehead.
I noticed the star.
It's a very good-looking episode, especially at the end.
I appreciated that, at least based on the portraits, Dahal had just the same intense expression in his eyes when he was alive as he does as a mummy. Well, and you notice they did a bunch of the old, like, mummy movie tropes. Rain's lantern gets blown out even though they're underground. And it's like, where could the wind have come from?
The fact that they're using a lantern with a flame.
They open up the casket and it's empty. And I believe sandstorms really can generate electrical discharge, as shown. In the case of a sandstorm, it's from the static of all those particles like flying around in the air and rubbing against each other and generating charges.
Here's one more thing. One more thing of import.
Just one more thing.
Just one more thing. When Domon says Kyoji and the Devil Gundam have corrupted his genuine fighting spirit into something evil, this is the thesis of the show. Unlike in Tomino Gundam, where sometimes people are doing things that need to be stopped and you have to fight them. Mm-hmm. But the act of fighting itself is bad.
Regrettable.
And corrupting for those who do it. In G Gundam, fighting is good. A fighting spirit is an unambiguously good thing to have.
If it's put toward the right purposes, it can be put toward evil purpose.
But fighting is not an evil purpose.
No.
Fighting in the abstract is good.
Right.
It's fun. It's sports. It's entertainment.
And the fighting spirit is more neutral. Good or bad is fairly flexible. After learning about the battle between his grandfather and Dahal, Sai-Chi throws off his fear and fights with renewed vigor. He calls out, Hoka Kyoten Juzetsujin, translated in the subtitles as marvelous treasure of scripture, 10 perfect ranks, sending his 10 flame banners to surround the Pharaoh Gundam. Then says, Hashire Baopei, which in the subtitles is translated as dragon fire. And one of the dragon heads of the Dragon Gundam shoots a torrent of flame, trapping the Pharaoh Gundam in a fiery vortex. A vortex it somehow survives. The name of this attack was our first hint and led me to a classic of Chinese literature, The Investiture of the Gods. Written in the 16th century with authorship commonly attributed to Zhu Zonglin, Investiture of the Gods is part of the Shenmo, or Gods and Demons genre, popular during the Ming Dynasty. First published in book form between 1567 and 1619, The 100-chapter tale is essentially myth-making about the fall of the Shang dynasty and rise of the Zhou dynasty, set around 1046 BC. Combining history, folklore, mythology, legend, fantasy, and religion, the Wikipedia page describes it as a romanticized retelling of the overthrow of Di Jin, the last ruler of the Shang dynasty, by Ji Fa, who would establish the Zhou dynasty in its place. As you can imagine, the story has an enormous cast of human heroes, immortals, sorcerers, spirits, and magical creatures, some of whom, thanks to recent adaptations and their appearance in other works, I recognized. For instance, the sometimes hero Neja is on the side of the Zhou. While less well-known in the English-speaking world than Romance of the Three Kingdoms, The Water Margin, or Journey to the West, Investiture of the Gods is still hugely influential and has numerous translations and adaptations across all kinds of media, including manga. Remember that in and around working on G Gundam, Imagawa was also working on the OVA Giant Robo, based on a manga by Yokoyama Mitsuteru. Well, Yokoyama also created the manga Inshu Densetsu, roughly translated as Legend of Yin and Chol, or alternatively, Shang and Zhou, based on Investiture of the Gods. The first issue came out in May of 1994, the month before this episode of G Gundam was first broadcast. We weren't able to get our hands on the manga to see if there were more direct or specific references to it in G, but it's certainly interesting timing.
And as we were looking into this, I discovered that there was a new translation of Investiture into Japanese in 95, a different manga adaptation in 96, and then another new translation in 99, so clearly it was having a moment in the 90s.
To bring it back to the episode, the first thing Saisaichi says is Hoka Kyoten, which the on-screen text describes as marvelous treasure of scripture. Kyoten does mean scripture, as in a religious text, but Hoka doesn't mean anything in Japanese, at least not that I could find. However, the individual characters mean treasure or jewel and splendor, shine, or flower. The breakthrough came in the second part, Juzetsujin. In the episode, this is 10 perfect ranks, and while researching, I also saw it phrased as the 10 heavenly arrays or 10 absolute formations. These are magical attack formations used by the 10 heavenly lords in Investiture of the Gods. To learn a bit more about these, I read a few relevant chapters of an English translation of the text, specifically chapters 44 through 49. Chapter 44 opens with each of the 10 heavenly lords describing their special formation to Grand Tutor Wen. Most of them use special battle pennants. Remember that the Dragon Gundam has 10 fiery pennants that it frequently uses for special attacks. And these combine various types of energy. The Heavenly Destruction uses pre-creation energies and 3 pennants, representing heaven, earth, and humanity. In the trap, humans are reduced to ashes, while immortals are shaken loose and fall into pieces. Earthly Fury contains energies of the earth concentrated into a solid mass. It undergoes endless changes, now appearing, now disappearing. It has a red pennant, and when it waves, thunder roars above, and flames spring up from below. Roaring Typhoon produces wind and fire, but they are not ordinary wind and fire. They existed before Genesis. Millions of swords are concealed therein, which emerge as the wind and fire arise. Men and immortals alike will be cut into small pieces. Frigid Ice, which we saw depicted in the Neja movie, is in fact a mountain of swords above solid blocks of ice. At the center are wind and thunder, and then the upper and lower sections of ice crash together. Golden Light uses the essences of the sun and moon, heaven and earth. 21 magic mirrors, each hung on a high pole, emit these essences in the form of golden light, which turns any intruder, either man or immortal, into a stream of blood. Bleeding blood is another that uses primordial energies. When someone enters the trap, wind and thunder rise, whipping up black sand that turns anything it touches to blood. Vehement Flame is bounded by 3 red pennants and contains 3 kinds of fire. The divine fire that immortals produce in their stomachs, the fire of air, and the fire of rock. It instantly burns any intruder to ashes. Soul Snatching Trap uses one white paper pennant inscribed with charms and is full of the most deadly essence from heaven and earth. It blocks all the doors of life and opens wide all the windows of death, snatching away an intruder's soul. Red water contains the essences of liquid. In the center there is a platform in the shape of the 8 diagrams, and on the platform there are 3 dried gourds. When the Heavenly Lord casts down the gourds, they pour forth red water like a great flood, and if even one drop of this red water touches the intruder, they are instantly turned to blood. A whole lot of these just turn people into blood. Red sand is composed of 3 pecks of sand, each representing heaven, earth, and man. Each grain of sand is a sharp sword that will reduce any intruder to powder. The Heavenly Lord, who is master of red sand, brags that not even an immortal or a Buddha can escape. Grand Tutor Wen and the 10 Heavenly Lords are on the side of the Shang dynasty, besieging the rebel Zhou forces. The Zhou forces describe themselves as standing up to a tyrant, and have at this point taken a great deal of territory. Each of the 10 perfect ranks is set up like a trap on the field of battle, and their use in the story mostly follows this pattern. The Shang side issue a challenge. The Zhou commander divines who fate has chosen to go first and sends them over. This is usually a mortal hero. The Heavenly Lord and the mortal hero battle with physical weapons for several rounds before the Heavenly Lord retreats into their corresponding trap. The mortal hero follows and is killed. The Shang side taunt the Zhou side for sending mortal soldiers to their deaths, rather than the immortals who have come to Zhou's aid. Subsequently, an immortal goes out and battles the Heavenly Lord, who, as before, retreats into the trap. However, the immortal is able to survive the trap due to their own powers and magical items, and ultimately defeats the Heavenly Lord. This is where the second part of Saisaichi's attack name comes in. While it says Dragonfire in the subtitles, I believe what he says is Hashire Baopei. In this context, Hashire means go or launch. Baopei gave me some difficulty. For one thing, I also saw it transliterated as Baobei, Paobei, and Paopei. For another, in Japanese, the kanji used in the episode mean cowrie shell. So I knew it had to be from Chinese, but its most common usage, if Google Translate is any indication, is as a term of endearment for babies. Luckily, Wiktionary came to the rescue, and I learned that one definition of baopei is a treasure or a valuable object. And it is the blanket term used in Japanese translations of Investiture of the Gods for the various magical items used throughout the story. One example, used against Heavenly Master Sun by the fairy Primordial, is the 9-dragon Divine Fire Coverlet, which wraps around the target, trapping them while 9 fire dragons coil around the outside and then burn the target to ashes. Ultimately, I don't think the Dragon Gundam's attack here is meant to be a reference to a specific attack or magic weapon in the Investiture of the Gods, but rather is inspired by the way these things are described in the text, though, not having read the whole thing, I could be wrong. And the inspiration doesn't end there. Twice in just those few chapters, groups of characters speak in one voice, which is to say, in unison, just like the monks who accompany Saisaichi do. And on a grand narrative level, what is G Gundam but a story of mortals, caught in the middle of a battle between superhuman and supernatural forces? Next time on MSB episode 11.11, Rain's Man. We research and discuss G Gundam episode 11 and we heroically refrain from making any reference to that famous song. I have some bad news. Your son has evil robot disease. Rainy day smooth jazz. Sasuga domon. Let's rampage like it's 1453. Good old Colony U.
Go fighting comets.
Can rain extinguish an old flame? Like that fungus that mind controls ants. Regularly scheduled weather. Ugh, it's all worms in there. Is the Devil Gundam the Antichrist? And if you won't give me a hand, I'll just have to take it. Ready? Go!
Mobile Suit Breakdown is written, recorded, and produced by us, Tom and Nina, in scenic New York City, within the ancestral and unceded land of the Lenape people, and made possible by listeners like you. The opening track is Wasp by Misha Dioxin, the closing music is Long Way Home by Spinning Ratio, and the recap music is Window by 1000 Hands. You can find links to the sources for our research, the music used in the episode, additional information about the Lenape people, and more in the show notes on our website, GundamPodcast.com. You can get in touch with us by email at hosts@GundamPodcast.com. If you'd like to support the show, please tell your friends about us, leave us a nice review wherever you listen to podcasts, or if you'd like to support us financially, you can do so at GundamPodcast.com/Patreon. Or look for other ways to support the show at GundamPodcast.com/support. Most of all, thank you for listening. Are you ready to come down to Neo New York and throw hands over your Gundam opinions? No? You lack conviction. Or maybe you just haven't heard an opinion worth fighting over yet. So how about this one, from Kobayashi? There is no rational explanation for why Argo Gulski, the largest Gundam fighter, does not simply eat the others. That's a good ending.
Thank you.
So why didn't you read the whole thing?
'Cause it's 100 chapters long.
How many pages was the translation we found?
Oh, it's like 1,000.
Oh, so you don't want to record today. You want to record again next week.
I mean, we're going to have to record again next week. We're going to do what we do every week, Tom.
Try
Record
to take over the world.
a Gundam podcast.
It's not the most efficient way to take over the world.
No, we don't want that kind of responsibility or attention.
I would like the power.
And this is why you must never have it.
Rude.
I shall force the world to be good.
I think I could do a much better job because of my incorruptible morals.
That's you, all right. Incorruptible.
When have I ever been corrupted?
I'm a bad influence. Or a fun influence.
Bad.
When Domon has crushed the gummy in the shine.
The gummy? Remember there was a few years ago, they had found some, like, liquid in a mummy tomb? A lot of people were joking about, like, drinking the mummy liquid.
Well, wasn't there a thing where somebody found like a 200 or more than 200-year-old cask of wine, and then they and some friends drank it and they all got sick?
200 or 2,000? Because I feel like a 200-year-old bottle of wine wouldn't even be that old. Surely there's bottles of wine from 1800 hanging around.
And I'm Nina. Sorry.